Welcome to the show. We hope you'll stick around. Mr. Sean is here to terrify and put you in the ground. We've got spooky, we've got scary, we've got horror still unseen. Genre Miniatures is here to stay. We hope we make you scream.
Welcome back, Chimera Crew, to the third installment of Hal's Low-Cost Thrift and Consignment by Roland T. Flackvisor. If you have not yet watched the first two parts, links to them can be found in the description. Also, be sure to head over to the author's subreddit and give him a follow. Links in the description. And on the topic of links in the description, perhaps consider checking out my links and becoming a patron, becoming a YouTube member, or purchasing a mini off of YouTube and Mercari. Also be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We are less than 10 subscribers away from our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and only you can help make that happen. Now, without further ado, let's begin. I had to hand it to Hal, I thought, as our motley crew settled into our table at Hal's low-cost fine dining and exotic foods. He really had managed to corner an extremely niche market. It made me think of that old story of Michael Jackson renting out an entire grocery store and populating it with his own people so that he could experience what it was like to be a normal person going grocery shopping. If you were a Lovecraftian horror from an alternate dimension with a taste for human souls, I would imagine going out for dinner and drinks at a restaurant with friends was an experience you were rarely able to enjoy. I had been in the restaurant a few times since beginning my employment, but it was mostly just in and out for restocking purposes. One time it was to help chase down a zombie who was trying to dine and shuffle, But this was my first time actually dining here. If one were to disregard the clientele, they could almost believe there was nothing overtly special about this particular eatery. That was until they sat down and began to actually examine their surroundings. The decorative artwork existed in the same banal subgenre found in an average chain Italian restaurant. Bland and forgettable scenes of idyllic European wineries, except the woodpile at the side of the living quarters was composed of bones, and there seemed to be a decapitated body lying next to the stump decorated with an axe standing at a 45-degree angle. Portraits of a happy family in a sunny kitchen casually chopping the fingers off a disembodied arm. One painting towards the entrance to the kitchen was of a scared-looking man who seemed to be frozen midway through pounding on the canvas in an attempt to break his way out. There were only around 30 tables in the restaurant, but they were spread far apart to accommodate diners of any size. Of those 30 tables, only 6 of them were occupied. 3 by seemingly normal humans, if not for the noticeable blood splatters around each of their plates. A large gelatinous blue blob relaxed contently at another, while a full-sized human slowly digested inside of it. Another held a minotaur and a gorgon who gazed at each other with hunger, though whether it was for sex or dinner was impossible to tell. At the final table sat Satan in all his red-skinned, spiral-horned, cloven-footed glory. He seemed to be completely engrossed in his copy of Atlas Shrugged. My eyes lingered on Satan for a bit, wondering if the traditional neutrality of the restaurant had maybe been taken a little too far. As a result, I jumped a little in my seat when the waiter spoke behind me. "Sir, would you like to sample the house vine?" I turned around and locked my eyes with a pair of dead ones that stared back at me. The vampire looked young, maybe 18 or 19. His hair had that way too greased look that all vamps seem to have. His gaunt skin looked almost as if it had been stretched over his skull, and his canines bulged out grotesquely from his mouth. His gaze seemed to drip hate, probably at the world in general, but it certainly felt like it was directed at me personally. I will never in a million years understand why people thought vampires were sexy. "Sure, Sparkles, pour one out," I responded. The vampire grimaced and proceeded to pour a taste of deep red wine for me. "Aged 50 years, notes of oak, lavender, and brunette." I blinked at the last one, feeling a sharp tingle down my spine, knowing that it meant exactly what I thought it meant. This would be a line I hadn't crossed yet. Butch watched me from across the table, his eyebrow cocked as if curious what I would do. I met his eyes and downed the glass. Still a trainee, my ass. I'm not exactly sure what this fact says about me, but I found the wine to be excellent. It's delicious, but I probably couldn't afford the bottle. Not when Butch is paying me half what he's paying the temp. Just a virgin daiquiri for me. The bloodsucker nodded and moved around the table, taking everyone's drink order. Babs gently nudged me and whispered,
"The waiter you just called Sparkles is Gwade, the eldest son of the ruling vampire family in Europe. He's over 600 years old."
I looked at her with a slight smile. "Butch just admitted he's stuck on the mortal plane," I whispered back. "How long has he been stuck here?"
"About 500 years, I think."
"Last week, I called him a non-Tesla pigeon fucker. For me, Sparkles is downright polite." Babs gazed at me thoughtfully.
"You know, I'm putting the odds at about 50-50 for whether your personality is going to take you far in this lifestyle or get you killed in the next week."
I shrugged. If I'm going to be killed, I want to feel like I deserved it. Hey, if Sparkles is a prince, what the hell is he doing working here?
"No idea. He would never talk about it. My guess is that he or his dad owes Hal for something. That's how most people end up working here."
"Not me. I volunteered."
"Yeah, but you're pretty fucked up in general, right?"
"Fair enough." Butch glanced at us. "I think you two whispering together might just be the most terrifying thing in this restaurant." "Don't be jealous, Butch," I quipped. "You know you'll always be my bae." He rolled his eyes at me, and then turned back to X-Mac. "I hate to admit it, but I think you're the first Cupid I've ever met."
"Yeah, I'm not surprised,"
X-Mac said while helping himself to a piece of bread from the center of the table.
"You don't really strike me as a one-night stand kind of guy."
Babs was occupied with pouring a little water onto a saucer for the three-headed quokka, so she didn't see the glance Butch sent in her direction. "Guess not. What's that got to do with it, though? Aren't you basically a heavenly matchmaker?" X-Mac squinted.
More like a divine eugenicist. When it's destiny for two people to bump uglies and push out a kid, they send me in. "Well, that's a bit disillusioning,"
Babs commented.
"You don't inspire love, then?"
X-Mac laughed.
"When you hear stories about Cupid, how does it go? He fires an arrow at a couple of unsuspecting people, they run to each other and immediately start making out and dry humping each other. Does that sound like love to you? Sure, in the old days, once a few periods were missed, they were pretty much forced to get married, and sometimes love would grow from the pairing, but that initial can't keep your hands off each other feeling, that's us. That's pure lust, sugar tits."
Gwade returned with our drinks. I wasn't sure what satanic bar they poached their mixologist from, but the daiquiri was incredible. I quickly scanned the menu when I realized Gwade had started taking food orders. Despite my experimentation with the wine, I wasn't ready to go full cannibal yet. Unfortunately, that eliminated most of the menu, so I went with the plesiosaur sushi. Babs and Butch started to bicker about his choice of Erymanthian boar, her claiming that he needed to start watching his blood pressure, and him arguing that he was functionally immortal. While I listened to their banter, I began to feel the prickling sensation of a pair of eyes studying me. I looked across the restaurant and found myself locking eyes with Satan. He had closed his book and was contemplating me thoughtfully from his table. After a moment of us staring at each other, he tilted his head towards the door to the kitchen, then stood up and casually strolled through them. At some point, I was really going to have to examine why I felt the compulsion to do the most recklessly irresponsible things, because when most people see the devil attempt to lure them into the back of a restaurant that serves human, their response is to run the other way. My response was to mutter something about going to get another daiquiri and walk right into the kitchen after him. I waved hello to the chef, a giant millipede who handled a dozen different saucepans at once, and nodded to the sous chefs, a large hairy man with giant tusks sprouting downwards as he garnished a person's crushed head on a silver plate surrounded by kale and sprouts, and a Middle Eastern man wearing a full tool belt who was sawing through a human leg with a handsaw. I gritted my teeth as I continued past the kitchen into the pantry area. I hated coming in here. Although one wall of the long pantry contained all the normal professional kitchen ingredients, the other wall was lined with stacked cages filled with terrified-looking people who immediately started begging me for help. I wasn't so jaded yet that I didn't feel that shock of horror and sink of guilt as I tried to keep an impassive face. Morality became far more complicated once you understood your true place on the food chain.
Shut up,
growled a voice at the back of the pantry. The cages went quiet.
What the fuck are you doing here, Clea?
3 things, Satan. I began, holding up 3 fingers. 1, how do you know my name? I know I'm already kind of a big deal around here, but I don't think the news of my exploits had gotten as far as your ears yet. 2, I'm thinking about putting out a petition to rename this place the Monster Mash. What do you think? And 3, I know you're the essence of pure evil and all that, but Ayn Rand? Seriously? Satan laughed.
I completely forgot. From your perspective, we haven't met yet. But believe me, we're old friends.
I don't know. I feel like I would remember that.
How about now?
Satan vanished. Simultaneously, I felt a slight pressure on my left shoulder. I turned my head to see a tiny version of Lucifer standing there.
No, really, Clea, you don't need to feel bad pushing that kid off of the swings. You told him you wanted to turn 10 minutes ago. It's fine, Clea. She's a nice girl. You don't need to wear a condom with her. It's only Walmart, Clea. Everybody shops from Walmart once in a while. Don't worry about it, Clea. Everyone already expects you to drink the blood wine.
The weight from my shoulder disappeared and the devil-looking guy popped back into full size in front of me again. You're my shoulder demon?
That's a bingo.
We just say bingo. So, you're not the real devil then?
Nope, just your personal Jiminy Locust.
Hey, can you do one-handed push-ups?
Can you hold a conversation that's not 80% movie references? Now, I repeat, what the fuck are you doing here?
Waiting for my Nessie sushi. Why? Think I should have gone with the dragon roll instead? My demon stared at me.
It's amazing that no part of you needs my encouragement to constantly make shitty jokes.
If you're my shoulder demon, you should already know I only started making bad jokes so that I would stop shitting myself instead.
And the next time I catch him alone, I'm going to slap Butch full in the face for that. Anyways, I just wanted to have a quick face-to-face with you and make sure you actually want to do this.
Shouldn't there be a shoulder angel having this talk with me?
He quit when you were 19. He's running the AA meeting in the 3rd circle now.
Jesus, am I really that hard to work with?
Yes, look, I agree this is out of my bailiwick, but this isn't the kind of descent into bad decisions I'm used to. This rabbit hole goes deep, Clea. Deep enough that even I have concerns about where we'll end up. You're close enough to the entrance that we can still climb back out, get back to a normal life. We can get one of your old jobs back, find some hottie to settle down with, get a house with a man cave where you can get stoned and bang the babysitter after the kids go to bed. Trust me,
It'll be a fair shake better than where we could end up if you go through that door to purgatory. I stared at my shoulder demon in horror. Clear, you need to calm the fuck down. You're drunk. I am not, I shouted as I filled my pockets with the iron powder Butch had used a few hours earlier. I had been lost in an existential dread throughout the remainder of dinner. We just need to get going right fucking now, and I want to be prepared. I've never been to Purgatory before. I haven't even been to Florida. Purgatory is like Florida, right? I feel like I heard that. Butch shrugged. No, not at all. But also, yeah, kinda. It's still not so bad that you need to bring Excalibur. I paused in the process of clumsily strapping the huge sword across my back before letting it clatter back to the ground. You're right. We need a low profile. I'll just take the Cloak of Cowardice, I said, pulling the black supervillain cloak off of a shelf and flourishing it over my shoulders. Seriously, Clear. What the hell's gotten into you? I don't want to work at IHOP again, I yelled, my panic infusing my voice with more volume than I intended. A sharp slap echoed across the store. I looked to the far end of the store to see Babs stalking away from a broadly grinning X-Mac. What? He shouted after her.
Come on, it's a compliment!
Babs walked up and glared at me.
We really had to recruit the first angelic being that walks through the door? I know we can do better than a Cupid.
Look, I know he's a little Weinstein-y, I sighed. But the fairy was only able to tell us where Hal was at the particular moment we asked the question. He could already be gone for all we know. Babs shook her head.
Fine, but one of you two needs to have a talk with that guy. If I have to spend this entire trip hearing about his ideas for tattoos I should get on my chest, I'm going to feed him to the Rancor.
I looked at Butch. Do we have a...
It's an idiom, you idiot!
Babs snapped at me. Give me a break. It's only been a few weeks since I learned every other fucking thing was real.
Why did we put you in charge of this again?
It was my animal magnetism, wasn't it?
Kid,
Babs said sourly.
Get the Cupid off my tits.
I grunted. Fine. Butch, go deal with the pervert angel. I'll get us packed, he told me. I nodded and made my way over to X-Mac, who was thumbing through a copy of Hustler. He glanced up at me.
Don't worry,
he told me.
I'll behave myself going forward. I just like starting the bar off low. It's the best way to continuously exceed expectations.
Believe me, I understand that philosophy better than most. He grinned at me.
I can always tell a kindred spirit.
Same. Never thought it would be with a Cupid, though. I never really thought about what you guys would look like in reality, but I didn't think I expected... I gestured to all of him. At Butch's polite request, X-Mac had decided to spare us his traditional sash and overtly chubby nudity. I was still on the fence about whether the neon green velour jumpsuit was actually an improvement.
If I'm gonna be hanging out in other planes of existence for a while, I'm doing it in style.
Is velour all the rage in purgatory these days? He raised an eyebrow at me.
First time?
I'm still pretty new to the lifestyle. Should I be worried? X-Mac gave me an appraising look up and down. My hands seemed to recognize his game and instinctually moved to cover my crotch.
Don't flatter yourself,
he told me scornfully.
I like my guys with a little more meat on their bones. I'd maybe reconsider that cloak before we go. It won't really look out of place, but it gets pretty hot during the day.
I swept my cloak up nospheratically. I need a plan B in case things go sideways. Also, don't I look awesome in this thing? Vintage vampire might be my new look. Are you drunk? Why does everyone keep asking me that? You were with us at the restaurant. You saw everything I had.
You had 4 daiquiris.
Virgin daiquiris. There was an extended pause. Those were regular daiquiris with virgin blood in them, weren't they?
Makes more sense now that I know you're a noob. Nothing fucks you up quite like virgin blood.
I tried to quell the queasiness that washed over me. For a moment, I reconsidered the cloak. I had already done far more vampiring that day than was probably healthy for me.
Are you two done blowing each other?
Babs was hefting a backpack over her shoulders.
If I don't have enough time for a detour to heaven to replace Katniss Everhard over there, we definitely don't have enough time for you to go mining for prostates.
Butch looked up from his inspection of the Chekhov gun and grinned at her.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I kinda missed how crass you get when you're impatient.
He slipped the gun into the waistband of his pants and looked over at us.
She's right, though. You guys all set?
I walked back to the counter and pulled the Soviet painting off the wall, making sure to keep my eyes from landing directly on it. I think I'll bring this along, I said as I pulled off the frame and rolled it into a manageable tube. It has that come-in-handy feel to it. I slipped the tube into the pack Butch had prepared for me. A quick glance inside showed a couple of sandwiches, a few religious relics, a set of brass knuckles, a handheld crossbow, and a big bag of weed. I pulled out the bag of weed. I'm not complaining, but is this really necessary?
We may need to bribe our way through at some point,
Butch explained. I replaced the weed and slid on the pack. I'll take your word for it. The purple door at the back of the shop opened and Jack popped his head out. He reached out a gnarled and clawed hand and pumped it up and down a few times.
Plunger's under the sink, Jack,
Butch told him.
We'll probably be gone by the time you get out. You all good in here for the next couple of days?
Jack threw him a thumbs up and disappeared back into the bathroom. I tried not to let my nervous eagerness show as Butch swept open the blue door to Purgatory. A vast desert wasteland greeted us. After what my shoulder demon said to me, I didn't hesitate for a moment before passing through the threshold. We walked out onto the alkali sand, kicking up soft, acrid clouds as our feet hit the wind-swept clumps. Our surroundings seemed to be a large, dried lake bed, completely flat and devoid of life for miles in any direction. Small dust devils sent spirals into the sky, blurring the distant mountains blocking the horizon. Toward the center of the desert, a twinkle of bright, colorful lights thrummed along with the slow, distant beat of a joyous hymn. It's going to take hours to walk there, I complained. Didn't the fairy mention something about a subway?
Just wait, it'll find us.
That raised a few further questions, but I got distracted by the sound of the distant hymn dropping the beat. I began wondering exactly what kind of heavenly song would make me want to start twerking when the ground began to shake violently below me. I fell on my ass alongside X-Mac and Babs. Butch managed to keep his feet and raised up a hand as if hailing a cab. Suddenly, a gigantic beast erupted from the sand and slid to a stop before us. Its huge cylindrical body ended in a huge gaping maw, lined with 3-foot-long teeth that dripped saliva. Butch walked up to the creature's mouth, grabbed a hold of its teeth, and hauled himself into its mouth. He looked back at us.
You guys coming or what?
The rest of us scrambled to our feet. I tried desperately to swallow the knot in my throat as I gripped the vibrating animal's incisors and swung myself onto its tongue. When we were all safely inside, the mouth slowly closed, and I felt the huge worm begin to burrow under the ground again. Babs started up a flashlight, illuminating the small portion of orifice we occupied. The worm's tongue undulated unpleasantly under our feet, keeping me perpetually attempting to keep my balance. I've got no strings to hold me down, to make me fret, to make me frown. I had strings, but now I'm free. There are no strings on me. I thought I was singing under my breath, but X-Mac turned to Butch to ask, Is he always like this?
For as long as I've known him, yeah.
If you guys don't think Pinocchio jokes are appropriate while in the mouth of a giant sandworm, I feel sorry for you, I told them perfunctorily.
Deathworm,
said X-Mac. Huh?
We're in a Mongolian deathworm. It's a similar but legally distinct creature.
I'm pretty sure purgatory is outside the jurisdiction of most copyright laws.
Wouldn't be so sure if I were you.
Xmac warned.
All the major studios have branch offices down here.
I shook my head. Spoil sport. So how long are we gonna have to stay inside Butch's mom? I got a laugh out of Babs with that one, which also served to get Butch's murderous look directed at her instead of me. As it turned out, the answer to my question was about 5 more seconds. I felt the tongue under me attempt to spell out the alphabet as it broke the surface and shuddered to a halt. My anxiety kicked into high gear as the maw began to open. I had been wrong. The distant music we had heard before was not a heavenly plea for redemption. Pounding electronic dance music poured in from the worm's mouth, and the undulating tongue unceremoniously pushed us out. I landed in a superhero pose on the hard-packed sand, my cloak swirling around me impressively. Babs gracefully stepped off the tongue and grinned down at me.
Having fun?
She asked. I think I might still be drunk on virgin blood, I told her. I looked around as the others clambered out of the worm's mouth. I had been all wrong about purgatory. I expected penitence, monotonous forms of torture, people praying for salvation maybe. Instead, I saw large tents set up in rows forming semicircles several miles long. Human and monsters in an eclectic array of costumes rode bicycles and scooters along dusty roads. Grotesquely decorated buses blasted music as crowds hung out of the windows, drinking and dancing. In the center of the desert area, surrounded by the tent circles, a large sculpture of a stick figure glowed softly in the scorching daylight.
"Welcome to Purgatory,"
Butch murmured.
And that ends part 3 of Hal's low-cost thrift and consignment. This is currently the most recent part of this story uploaded by Ronald T. Flackpfizer on his subreddit, Ronald's Writing. It has been 6 months since a new part of this story has been published, but rest assured, dear listener, when a new one is, you'll hear it here. Since I began recording this story, we have finally reached our goal of 1,000 subscribers. I would like to thank each and every one of you that has subscribed to the channel, either recently or in the past. You have all helped make this happen. Still, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, as well as checking the links and perhaps buying a miniature. Until next time, I'm Mr. Sean, this is Chimera Miniatures, and I sincerely hope that you alpha a great day and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Now the show has reached its end, but fear it doesn't fade. Mr. Sean will haunt your dreams in the shadows where we've played. We've brought you chills, we've shared the frights, but the nightmares won't be gone. Chimera Miniatures whisper still until the break of dawn. So don't forget, we'll meet again in the darkness and the gloom. Thanks for watching. Now close your eyes, we'll be lurking soon.